Hi and welcome back to Darvanalee Designs Studio, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me again today. My name's Nicole Reed and we have been over the last couple of weeks doing a bit of a sew along. So we are working on the DD's Large Mountain Retreat bag. We're up to video 3. So if you haven't seen the previous 2 videos, check out our playlist, sew alongs with DD's. Also, you're going to need the pattern today as well. So you can find that over on our website, DarvanaleeDesignStudio.com, and it's under Patterns by DD's. So you'll find it there. It's right at the top of the page, and also you will find the playlist link under there as well. So you can find everything you need for this bag. So today we are up, as I said, we are up to video 3. We are going to be doing some assembly today. Today we are going to attach our internal pockets, so the center ones, to the sides of the bag, and we're also going to attach our pincushion and our flat pouch that we made, so the flat pocket that we made, that's getting attached to the lining. We also have to make our pincushion to attach that. We're going to also put a couple of pieces of felt as a needle book in there as well. So grab all your supplies and let's get started. So we are here for part 3 of our sew along, and basically you're going to obviously need your pattern. You're going to need some of the things that you've already made, and we are going to make a couple of things today as well. So you're going to need your lining. You're going to also need your 6 internal pockets. You're going to need the sides of your bag. You're also going to need your flat pocket. You're going to need the felt, and you're also going to need the components for the pin cushion, and also some polyfill to fill that pin cushion. Okay, you'll also need a button for your pin cushion as well, and if you have any sort of label or anything that you want to attach to your bag, so you can have that as well. All right, so you need some general sewing supplies. You're also going to need your sewing machine, and you're going to need a tailor's awl today, or a stiletto, they're sometimes called. Anything that you can just help you get your bag, just to hold it so your fingers aren't in the way or anything like that. And you're also going to need your wonder clips. All right, so we're going to get straight into it, and we are going to start with making our pin cushion. So I'm going to move all this out of the way and we'll get started on that. Okay, so for our pin cushion, basically you're just going to get your 2 squares. You're going to also have your button, and you're going to need your polyfill. You'll also need some thread to stitch it close and a hand sewing needle. So I have all my supplies here that I need. You can use grey thread, you can use anything that matches your pin cushion. All right, so all you're going to do right now is you are going to basically make your pin cushion. You're going to put them right sides together, your 2 squares. You're going to then just pin them, and just grab your friction pen, and you're going to just draw a little hole that you're going to leave in there, so that way we can actually put the stuffing into the pin cushion. All right, so we're going to head over to the sewing machine, and we're just going to stitch that closed. Now all we're going to do is we're going to start at one point, we're going to do a back stitch, and then we're going to stitch all the way around back to this point and do a back stitch, and then we will proceed from there, trimming up our corners using our pinking shears, and then we'll turn it through, stuff it, and close it up. Okay, so we've got that all stitched down. You can see there that I've done a back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and now all we're going to do is we're going to trim up the edges, and that just gets rid of some of the bulk. So all I do for that is I just use my pinking shears. Makes it nice and quick, nice and easy, and I don't cut into my stitching. And then I'll just snip up to where I've stitched, and I'll leave this bit here because that's going to give me a piece that I can fold under and stitch closed. Tips of my pinking shears are getting a bit blunt. Not surprised, I've had them for quite some time. Alright. Okay, so you can see there that I've trimmed all around, but I've left the part that I didn't sew without trimming that. So all I'm going to do now is pop my finger in there and turn it out the right way. Okay, so once you've poked all that out, what we're going to do now is I like to give it a little bit of a press first, and then I will start to put the toy fill into the pincushion. So grab your iron and your ironing pad. And then give it a really good press. And then at this point too, I also like to just tuck my seam in and give that a press, because that'll just make it easier to close up in just a sec after we're finished putting the polyfill in. Okay, so you can see there that that makes it nice and easy. I've got my seams tucked in and I don't have to worry about it not lining up or anything like that. So I do all the prep work for that part of the pincushion to make it easier for myself. Okay, so I know that that's going to stay there now. I'll just move my iron out of the way, and then I'm just going to grab the polyfill and I'm just going to start popping that into the pincushion. Now I don't leave a big gap because it's less for me to hand sew, so it can be a little bit cumbersome sometimes trying to get your polyfill in there, but just persevere using your thumb and just holding one side of the bag. You can start to get it in, and it becomes easier as you go on, as you're going along. Okay, so we now have our little pincushion. It's stuffed, it's firm, but it's not really like extra hard or anything like that. You want to get it up into your corners and just make sure that it's got a little bit of spring back in it. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to close up this hole here, and we're just going to close that up with a whip stitch. So you need to grab your sewing needle and your thread, and I'm just using a polyester thread. Then we're just going to thread our needle and we're going to double it over. And if you want to see this done a little bit closer, I will just pop a link up in this corner here, up here, and you can head over and see a video where I get really close to so you can see what I'm doing. But to start it, all I do is I go back into the seam a little ways back, and then I'll just come out. I've got a knot in the end of my thread, and that's just going to hold it there. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to line those two areas up so you can see there, and then I'm just going to go from one side to the other and just take a little tiny piece of the fabric on the edge, and then I will go from this side to that side, and I'll just go backwards and forwards. Okay, so now that I'm at the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back down into the fabric. I'm going to come out near that thread. I'm going to do a little bit of a knot, just slip that through, and then I'll go through a second time. So I'm trying to hold it, and I keep putting it against my body to hold it. Alright, so I've gone through that second time and I've pulled that down, and then I'm just going to go down and I'm going to bring the needle out down here, and I'm going to give that a little bit of a pull, and that knot has now gone down into the seam. Okay, and then all I do is snip off that thread as close as I can to get to the fabric without cutting the fabric, and then it's now buried and in there. So don't discard your needle or thread just yet, because we need to attach our button. So basically what I do now is I just find the center mark. So I sort of just eyeball it, have a bit of a look, yep, can see it there, and then I'll just put a mark on the cushion so I know that's where it's got to go. Then I'll put another knot in my thread. Oh. And then I'm going to come up through the center of the cushion. So you can see there the needles come out. I'm not going to pull it too hard. I'm going to slide that down. And you can use any button you want. I just have these little handmade with love buttons that I got. I think I got them off eBay or somewhere like that. And then you're just going to go directly down again, squeezing your cushion together so your needle comes out at the bottom, and then pull your thread through without getting a knot. Okay, so we're only just going to be tacking this in, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it some embroidery floss that matches the pincushion, and then I will use that to attach it to the lining. Alright, so we're just tacking this in place. We don't need to pull it down too tight or anything just yet. Okay, we'll use the embroidery floss for that. So you can see I've got a little bit of an indentation there, and that's okay, but it doesn't have to, you don't have to get to that point. And I just find that the embroidery floss is a little bit more decorative and it's a little bit more strong, but that's going to hold my needle in place, and I know where I've got to go in and out from. So I'll just tie that off, because this is on the bottom and we're not going to see that. So just do a very just do a loop and go through the loop with the needle, and then you can snip that off. All right, so that's going to hold that in place. Okay, so that is our pincushion. Now we need to attach that to the lining. We also are going to be attaching our flat pocket as well. Okay, so we have our lining. Just move all your things out of the way because it's not exactly a small piece. Okay, we have our pocket and we have our pincushion, and now we need to attach them to the lining. You're also going to need something else that you're going to be attaching to the lining. Is also, we're making just a little needle book that goes beside the flat pocket. So grab that as well. All right, and just pin that together, and then grab your pinking shears. And all you're going to do with this is just pink the edges. Okay, and you're going to go all the way around. Okay, and this is just craft felt that I've had in the shop, and that's all I'm using. You can use wool felt if you want to, that's entirely up to you. Okay, so that is done, so we can set that aside for a moment, and now we're going to concentrate on our flat pocket. All right, so at one end of your bag, which will be the back end of your bag, okay, you're going to lay your flat pocket using the measurements that are in the pattern of where to place it. And all we're going to do is place that there, and then I'm going to put my label on at this stage, so I'll just pop that there like so. And then what I'm going to do is grab some pins, and I'm going to pin it into place. Okay, and you don't have to get too excessive with the pins, you just need to place them so it doesn't move on you. Okay, and then when you're looking at that, you just want to make sure that it is straight and it's not puckering. So see how here it's sort of lifting up and it's puckering? So I'm just going to lay that down again and smooth that so it's nice and flat, and then pop my pin in again, and you can see there it is laying a lot flatter. All right, so what you need to do to make sure that it's centered, you need to follow the measurements that are in the pattern and also measure that it is even on each side. Okay, so we have our flat pocket in place. Now all we need to do is head over to the sewing machine and stitch that down. Okay, so here we are at the sewing machine. I've got my 1/4 inch foot presser foot on there, so we're ready to start sewing. I've got my matching thread, and as I said, we are just going to stitch this flat pocket down onto the lining. So all we do for that is we just start in a corner. Okay, so you just slide that under. You want to use an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and I just pop that underneath there. I put the needle in the down position, and then I'm just going to sew all the way along. Now I'm not going to back stitch at this point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch on, and when I come back I will do a back stitch, and that way I won't get such a big build up of thread on the back or on the top. Now just remember, you are going through bulk on this, so if you're having any issues or anything like that, just grab your tailor's oil and that'll help you feed it through. Okay, make sure that you've got a nice sharp needle for this point. When we're coming to the bag assembly, it will just make your life so much easier if you've got a nice brand new needle in there. And yeah, and then you just stitch along. You may need to lengthen your stitch a little bit more, but I find that just working on a 3 works well for me. So you can see here that I'm just using my tailor's awl to hold that in place, and I'm just stitching along, and that's just securing it nicely. All right, So when you're coming up to the end, you just want to make sure that your pocket's not puckering up. You want to give it a little bit of a tug to make sure that it's sitting nice and flat. And you can also use your tailor's awl just to run along as you're stitching, and that will help it keep in place and help you get any sort of puckers out whatsoever. So as you come up to the end, you want to stop about 1/8 of an inch away, just like that, with your needle in the down position. If you don't have that feature on your machine, just hand crank it down into place, lift your presser foot up and spin your project. Okay, and you can see here that I've got that stitched down nicely, and it's about 1/8 of an inch. You can remove your pins as you go. I generally don't worry about it. I just wait till I get to the end, unless of course they're going to be in my way. Now when we come to our zipper, you want to just make sure that that zipper tab is sitting nice and flat, and you can go over it. Remember, you are coming up to some seams there, so just take it nice and slow. Okay, so our pocket is now attached. It works perfectly. It opens and closes, and we are right to now use it. So you can see there that I've put my little label on there, so that is secured in spot, and that I find on this bag is the best place to put it if you are putting a label on. Now what we need to do is add on our needle books. Okay, so we've got our, as I said, we've got our flat pocket on, and now what we're going to do on this side here, we are going to, I'll just get rid of that thread, we're going to attach our needle book. So all we do for that is we grab our needle book and we just fold that in half, just like so. And then I'm just going to grab my friction pen, and I'm just going to put a mark here and a mark down here, and that's on that crease. And then I'm going to lay that crease, okay, right along that edge that I just stitched on the flat pocket. And I'm going to grab my pin and I'm going to pin that in place on the lining, and I'm also going to pin it in place on the flat pocket. Okay, and that's going to just help me keep it from moving. Okay, and then as you can see here, I've got my little mark, and I'm just going to stitch right along there, not stitching on the bag. I'm just going to stitch along that crease there. If you need to, you can draw a line, because we can just flip this over, put our Teflon sheet down, and we can get rid of that mark. You can use a bit of chalk if you need to, and that will get rid of it as well. So you want to make sure that it is nice and straight. Okay, and I am just eyeballing it where it's got to land, but I sort of run my thumb along it, and you can see there that the seam from the flat pocket is just there. So I know that that's a good place for it to sit. And again, just make sure that it is straight, pop your pins in, and then that way it won't move on you either. Okay, put another one up the top here, away from where I'm going to sew. I'll move this one over here. Okay, so now I'm just going to stitch that down, and I'm going to do a back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and that's just going to give that a little bit more security. Of course, starting with the needle in the down position. Okay, and you might need to really push those pins in so that you can stitch properly. And I'm just stitching right alongside that bag without stitching on it. Do a back stitch, and that's it. It's on. That's as easy as it is. Cut your threads off. And there we go, our little needle book is in place. So we can remove those pins out of the way. And there we go. So you can put your needles in there without a problem. And you can see there, it's not on the bag, so there's just like a little bit of about 1/8 of an inch of a gap. So you want to get it as close as you can, but without stitching on the bag, because going through all that bulk is probably not going to get it to stitch real well. And you could run the risk of breaking a needle as well. So that is our little needle book in place. And now what we're going to do is we're going to grab some embroidery floss, a hand sewing needle, and we're going to attach our pin cushion. So I'm just going to move that out of the way, and I'm going to spin around my lining. Okay, I've got my embroidery floss here, so I'll just grab out, I think I'm going to go with a blue. So I've got this blue here, and I think that that's going to match quite nicely. You can use whatever, you know, I like to match it to the lining or to the pin cushion, and you can see here that we've got a few different blues there, so that's a really good one to use for that. You could even use white on this one if you wanted to. All right, so basically I'm just going to get a small piece, maybe about the size of my forearm. Okay, I'm going to trim that off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate it. So all I do is I just flick the end of it, and you can see there that the strands are starting to separate. And I just grab one, and then I'll come back and I'll grab another, and it just slides straight out, and you won't get any knots or anything like that. Okay, so we're just going to use 2 strands today, and you're going to tie a knot in the end of one. I'm not having much luck with knots today. There we go. All right, so I've got a knot, and then I'm just going to grab a needle that has got a larger eye. It's just going to make it super easy for me to thread, and then I don't have to worry about trying to get it through, or the needle splitting the yarn or anything like that. Okay, so I'll grab my needle threader. That makes it easy too. And just pop that through. All right, so now all I have to do is just find the center. So I want to come down a ways. I don't want it to be right up near the edge like this. I want to come down a little bit. So what I tend to do when I'm making these bags is I just use the and this is the front of our bag. So when we've got our bag open, this is facing us. So I just want to come down a little way, and I just sort of use the grid pattern that I've got there. And then I sort of eyeball it to where it's going to be in the center. And of course you would measure this yourself and make sure that it is in the correct position. All right, so now I'm ready to stitch that into place. So basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it in place like so with my hand. I'm going to come to the back, and then I'm going to come up through the pin cushion, and then I'm going to come out of the hole on the button. And this is a little bit tricky, so you might have to just move that. You can see there I'm just moving the button to see the tip of the needle, and then that's coming out now. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that, and then I'm going to go down through the other side, straight through the back of the lining, and then I'm going to pull that a little bit tighter. So I sort of tried to squeeze it at this point, and then I'm going to go back down through the lining of the fabric, and then I'm going to come out through the hole in the button on the first one that I did. Okay, and then I'll just give that a little bit of a pull, and you can see there that it's starting to go down. Now you will have to put some pressure on it and give it a little bit of help, but just keep going through until you feel that it's secured in spot. And it is a little bit tricky because you're sort of coming up blind and you can't see where it is. So I sort of just try to move the button a little bit and maneuver it and give it a little bit of helping hand. So you can see there that it's starting to get a nice indentation into the cushion. Okay, so I only do that about 4, maybe 5 times, depending on the floss that I'm using. And then once I've done that, I basically go back through to the bottom, so to the back of our lining, give it a really good tug and hold it in place on the other side. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish that off by creating a loop, putting the needle back through it and doing that twice. And that's going to hold it in place. Just like so. Okay, so the next thing that I do is I like to stitch these little corners down. So what I do is I get rid of this one, and then I will grab my thread from before. So I've got my needle here threaded and ready to go. Again, I'm just going to tie a knot in that, and then I'm going to make sure that it's all laying flat. Okay, and then I'm going to come up from the back and I'm just going to grab the corner of the pincushion, and then I'm just going to go back down into that corner. Okay, now it will make the pincushion sort of pull the lining up and all the rest of it, so you want to make sure that it is sitting flat. Okay, as flat as you can get it, and just stitch that into place. Now don't pull it too tight. See there, you can, if I pull that too tight, it just puckers everything up. It is just to secure it into place. And you just go through a couple of times. Okay, and then to secure that, again, it's on the back, I'm just going to do a quick knot once, twice, and snip that off, and then move to the next corner. Okay, so our pincushion is on, we have our flat pocket and our needle book is on, and now we move on to the next step, which is attaching our center pockets to the sides of our bag. So just set that aside and we'll move on to that. Okay, we're up to the sides of the bag, and this is where we're going to attach our center pockets. So the 6 pockets that we made last time, we're ready to put them in. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you've got rid of all your threads and that your edges are nice and even. So you may have to give them a bit of a press as I have, and you can see here that one's sticking out a little bit. So all you need to do is just grab your rotary cutter and grab a ruler, or you can use your pinking shears if you want to, if you find that easier, and you're just going to trim that off. We are starting with the ends that have no zipper pull at it, so we're starting at the opposite end of the zipper pull. Okay, and I'm just going to grab a ruler. It is. And I'm just going to lay that on, and I'm not going to take a lot off. I'm just, so you can see there's just a little bit of stuff just sticking out, and I'm just going to trim that off. Okay, and you can see there now that's nice and even. All right, so now what you're going to do in the pattern, there is a whole heap of markings and measurements and everything that you need for the sides of your bag. Okay, make sure you've got your fabric up the right way. So this is my outside bag, this is the inside of the bag. So what you're going to do, starting at this end, you're going to grab your pocket and you're going to line that up with that measurement, and you're going to line it up with the top stitching. So you don't want it right on the edge like that, you just want it to where the top stitching is. Okay, and you can see there that the bag is in between the top, the stitching we've got down the bottom, and it's given us a little bit of room there. You may have to wiggle around with it and make sure that it's nice and straight. It doesn't really matter if it does go above it a little bit. It is okay. Don't stress too much if you can't get it to line up. What we don't want is the bottom of this pocket all the way down here. Okay, we need to have this gap for next week when we attach it to the outside of the bag and our binding and everything on there. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold that in place, and then you're going to grab your side of your bag, the little triangle part here, and you're going to wrap that in like so. You're going to grab your wonder clips. Okay, we can remove that pin now, and we're just going to pop some wonder clips in. Okay, I generally use about 3. So you can see there that this is like nice, got a nice flush edge. This is nice and tight around, like if you feel it, you should be able to feel the pocket inside there. And that's why we didn't have to worry about having a closed edge. So you could imagine if we had closed that end up or even sewn that end, it would be quite bulky there. So this is going to make it nice and easy to go through your machine. Now you are going through quite a number of layers, so you are going to have to elongate your stitches. So take it up a little bit from your top stitching, so go up about another 1/2 mil or something along those lines to maybe a 3.5. Have a bit of a test and see how you go. Now when we get over to the sewing machine, we're going to be actually sewing 3/8 of an inch, so a little bit bigger than a 1/4 inch. Okay, and that way we know that we're going to catch all of that side of that raw edge of the pocket. Okay, and we're also going to backstitch at the beginning, and we're going to backstitch at the end. Okay, so you just start at the top and come down. You will need to go a little bit slow. You are going through quite some bulk here. Okay, you best to start with the needle in the down position. Okay, and you may need to just be very careful of your backstitch when you're going back. Make sure that you've got a heavy needle in your machine now, so you want to have a size 90 or 100 or even 110. Okay, and I like to use a denim needle for this side of the bag. A top stitch needle is really good as well. They're usually quite strong for it, but the denim I find is the better one. It's nice and sharp, it goes through the bulk, and I take it very, very slow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the angle of the camera. I'm going to set myself up at the sewing machine because we're going to be putting all 6 pockets in, and basically I'm just going to show you how to do that. Okay, so we're at the sewing machine and we're going to sew our first one in. So you can see there that I've got it wrapped around and I've got my wonder clips in place. I've changed my needle to a denim needle. It's a size 90, the one that I've got in here, and we're going to see how we go with that. Basically, make sure that when you put your pocket in that you do start with your mesh pocket, okay, and you start at the opposite end of the pull. My pouches are closed, okay, so it makes it nice and easy. So you can see here I've got the pull on the mesh pocket, and then I've got the zipper pull on the actual pocket itself at the same end, and all our pockets are going to go in the same way, so that way all our zippers are at one end. You can have them going opposite if you want to. I personally prefer them all to be at one end. Alright, so basically what we're going to do now, I'm just going to move the machine a little bit closer. I have elongated my stitches up, and so that is going to go through. It's going to give me a better finish. Okay, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this under. And as I said, I'm going to use a 3/8 of an inch, so it's a little bit wider than a 1/4 inch. So for me, I just find it easier to use the edge of my presser foot. Okay, I'm going to start with the needle in the down position. Get rid of that wonder clip. Okay, and I'll just bring that a little bit closer so you can see. Okay, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to get it into the fabric. So I just hand cranked it then because it was right on the edge, and I'm just going to go nice and slow. So I've got a speed control on my machine, so I can turn it down so it's nice and slow, and then put my presser foot down and then I'm going to start to stitch. So I've just done that lock off stitch there, so it makes it secured. Okay, I'm going to put my needle in the down position. I'm going to get my tailor's awl. Okay, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a helping hand to get over that first mound. Now, when you put them in, make sure that your zipper tab is pushed up towards the edge of the fabric and not pushed down, because that will create extra bulk and it won't go through. So nice and slow, we're just going to slowly push that through, and then I'm going to do a reverse. Okay, so I now know that my threads are secure and the top of the pocket is secure. And again, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a helping hand with my tailor's awl. I can't recommend this enough for this bag, and for any bag making. It's great. It can get right in there. You're not going to run over your fingers or anything like that. It's got a little bit of a point on it without putting a hole in it, so you can, you can just help it along. It just grabs it. So you can see there that I'm just stitching nice and slow, not too fast. Okay, using the edge of my presser foot, and then I'm just going to stitch all the way down to the bottom. And when I get down to the bottom, I will just do a back stitch there. And there's less bulk down the bottom as well, so it makes it a lot easier. So you can see there that I've just used the tailor's awl just to hold everything in place. Okay. And then I'm just down the end here, and I'm just going to do my back stitch, needle up, and grab my scissors wherever they went. There they are, and trim off my threads. Okay, so you can see there that I've got a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and it's secured in place. So I can open this up now, and I can see that I don't have any raw edges here on the inside, and it will be the same on the other side. So I'll just show you the other side. So you can see there that there's no raw edges. Okay, so that's what you're aiming for. So if you should happen to do a smaller seam, you may run the risk of actually having a raw edge exposed there. So that's why we're using the 3/8 of an inch. Okay, if you're not used to doing a 3/8 of an inch, when you before you start sewing, you can always use your ruler and a friction pen and mark 3/8 of an inch and just put like a dotted line all the way down, and didn't just join those dots as you're going down. For me, I know that it's 3/8 of an inch for the edge of my 1/4 inch foot, so the outer edge of it is about 3/8 of an inch, maybe a touch shy, but it works really well for me, and that's what I've done. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put our second pocket on. So what we do is we just flip this pocket out of the way, and then we go to our next mark point. So I'm going to move the sewing machine and do the next pocket and show you how that's done. Okay, so you can see our next point here. So all I'm going to do is grab another pocket. Okay, I have already trimmed this off, and I make sure that it's sitting nice and flat, and you can see that my zipper tab is going away from the part of the bag. And then again, all I'm going to do is lay that nice and flat, pop on to where that mark is, the edge of the bag, so you can see there that it's lining up with that mark and it's not going all the way down the bottom, so I've got that gap there. And then all I'm going to do is bring the previous bag and the side of the bag over like I did last time. Okay, holding that all in place and making sure that it is all straight and it's not wonky or anything like that. So I can see that this edge down the bottom here is nice and straight, and this edge here I can feel that both of them are even. And then I just grab my wonder clips again. I can remove that pin now, and I pop the wonder clips in. And then we go to the sewing machine and do exactly what we did with this one. So we start with the needle in the down position, we do a couple of stitches, do a back stitch, and then sew 3/8 of an inch all the way down and back stitch at the end. And then we will repeat that for the remainder of the pockets. Okay, so we've got our first side on, and you can see there it's sort of all sewn in and it's concertinaed. So now what we've got to do is we've got to do the other end. Alright, so basically what you're going to do is, you can see here that I have my mesh pocket facing away from me. Okay, I'm going to lay that face down, and then I'm going to take this back pocket and I'm going to move the rest out of the way. So I've just got this back pocket. Okay, then I'm going to lay down my side. So we're going to be starting from this end here. Okay, and we're going to take our back pocket and we're going to place that onto our side panel. Okay, and doing exactly what you just did with the other side, we're just going to wrap that over. Okay, so you line it up with the mark that you've got there, and you can see there that we've got that in place. Now, if you're not sure whether you've got it in the right position or not, just do what I would normally do, and that is pop the wonder clips on and then sit it back into place. And you can see there that the rest of the bag pocket, the rest of the pockets are going to attach to the side of the bag quite nicely. Okay, so again, set them aside, and we're going to start from the top again. Okay, and you're going to do a back stitch, 3/8 of an inch seam, exactly what you did with the other one, and then we will continue doing that and get all of them sewn in. Okay, so there we go. We have the sides on our bag that you can see there. All the pockets are attached. All the zippers are at the same end. That does my head in when they're going all different ways. We have our mesh pocket at the front and everything is secure. Alright, so that is it for today's video. We've got our flat pocket onto our lining as well as our pincushion, and we've got our little needle book in place and our center pockets done. Alright, so if you like this video today, don't forget to give us a thumbs up down below. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you thought. And I will see you all again next week for part 4, where we do our final assembly. Bye for now.